intense rain, then you know that there's going to be flooding. I used to live here in Mother Ignacia, very close to here. And right in front of us is this big duck, and the flooding there reaches 18 feet. What happens when there's heavy rain? We wake up and drive the cars from the street up to the, there's an immediate knee-jerk reaction. Intense rain, you go out and drive the cars, We didn't have that kind of prediction, but I think with simple rain gauges, that's a very simple...
So this system of measuring the rain is such a simple thing that nobody thought about it?
Again, I always say everybody's a genius after the fact.
Okay.
But we have training as a geologist. I knew instinctively that this kind of rain, so much rain in a little bit of time, will mean flooding, and very, very importantly, although it didn't happen in Metro Manila, landslides. If you are in a landslide-prone area and then you have rained 30 millimeters in an hour, better get out of there. So,
okay. Tina, can I butt in and ask something? Okay, this is very provocative on my part, but a lot of the blame was being put on Pag-asa because CNN was announcing something big was coming, but locally everyone went out because, hey, no big deal. So how much of it was due to Pag-asa's lack of equipment? How much of it may have been scientific incompetence? And second point of the question is, in terms of the little bits of information that could have been collated by experts such as yourselves, was a system in place for the data to come in and be processed in a timely fashion?
Okay, regarding the Pag-asa data, I mean, it's easy to blame people in Pag-asa for not predicting rain. I can blame Pag-asa if they don't predict wind velocities because they have all the equipment. But it's very difficult to blame them when they don't have the equipment to predict the rain rate.
The Doppler radars.
The Doppler radar. And maybe they will not mention it, but I heard, I hope it's not true, but if it's true, it's criminal, that the Doppler radars were not purchased because some politicians were fighting over when it should be installed. If there's something that should be investigated, it should be this. Do not blame people whose job it is, who spend all the hours, they don't sleep practically. They don't get paid very well, the engineers. And here, when I heard that story, it's not confirmed, that the Doppler radars were delayed because some politicians fought over it. Those guys have something to answer for.
But when you're looking at the event as it's taking place, and you were advocating that there are simple equipment that people could have in the neighborhoods as a neighborhood watch to gauge the rate of rainfall. There was questions, for example, that the Inquirer raised because, as you were pointed out, a geologist knows if your watershed is denuded, they can't trap the water, it'll go down. But there's a fixed rate about its traveling, and it took 8 hours for the water to travel down the mountains before it hit Metro Manila. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's not only a simple denudation. This was a freak event. That's just a lot of rain. It was just 1 month's rain in a few hours. Even if all of the trees were planted in the Sierra Madre, you would still have flooding, maybe not as much. That's something important to understand. There were no dams involved here. There was just too much rain.
Okay, Dr. Lagmay, what about
you? First, your question about how we're able to apply it.
Yeah.
One thing that comes out or turns out very clearly is that everybody was caught by surprise. Private citizens, the government, the media, everybody here were caught by surprise. So the reason probably why that happened is because we were not aware that such kind of scenario would happen, because it was an extreme event. In Manila, we've never had flooding of such magnitude. And in our studies, we do this in disaster work. We do the geographic information systems. So what we thought of doing on the 26th and came out on the 27th online was the Typhoon Ondoy maximum flood heights, where everybody could input all of their anecdotal accounts of the flood everywhere in Metro Manila, including Marikina. And that way they can put in whether it was ankle high, waist high, so that we can immortalize, if I may use the word of the other girl, immortalize the event, so that people in the future, 20 years or 50 years or 70 years from now, would have an account or be aware that such kind of event can happen. So we did that. We're formulating a validation scheme by which to make sure that the inputs of the Metro Manila residents would be a good one. So we're doing that by getting a simulation, a computer simulation of the flood event. The flood event came in, or maximum was around 1 p.m. The discharge was highest at around 2 p.m. in Tumana, along Marikina River, in Tumana, just north of Provident. But the thing is, in the computer simulations that we've made, the peak discharge was lower.
When you say peak discharge, is the amount of
the
flood
flow
water
of water, yeah,
from the flooded in-city sites?
Along Marikina River.
Along Marikina River.
And the peak discharge that happened past or south of the Provident Village and SM Marikina happened at around 5 to 6 p.m. And this is something that we're working on. So once we immortalize the account of the flood, then we'll have a scenario, a flood scenario, where government officials such as NDCC could work on. So if we have the flood hazard map, I know that flood hazard maps exist in certain places in Metro Manila, but probably not of this magnitude. So if we had this kind of map, one where everybody would participate in, it's a community effort. So when a resident plots in the map, they would see that, malapit pala kami sa river. Malayo kami sa river. Not all places in Marikina were flooded at a high level. So in the simulations that we've created, only the places which were near the Marikina River and in the floodplains were flooded. But in certain places, if you ask some of our friends from Marikina, their places were not that flooded. It was just ankle high or what.
Tina, let me walk you and our viewers through what Mahar has been talking about. Now, this is not the exact same thing that Mahar has put up, but it's the child of Mahar in a sense, because you were involved with putting up the Typhoon Ondoy map and everything on Google with all the volunteers as it was going on.
Actually, it was my idea, but it was executed by my research assistants, students from the University of the Philippines, and then we collaborated with Manila Observatory, Ateneo de Manila.
And lots of people joined on. Now, this is the child of it, because this gave birth to what's now called the Google Disaster Tool, which is sort of our gift to the world, because now the whole world can use it. Now, if you see it on your screen, you see that there's a map. And what Mahar was talking about earlier was you could go to a map like this, a similar map, and put a little pin, a blue one if it was 5 feet, a green one if it was 10 feet, and that sets the benchmarks. You know that on such and such a date in 2009, it got that high for future reference, and the city planners can figure out that the roads were acting as dikes to keep the water, etc., etc. But I'd like for you to discuss further with our viewers how something like this is actually useful during an emergency, because all of us were looking at this map to see, where the trouble was taking place, and later on, moving forward, planning. Dr. Vino, you're looking at something like this about future everything from infrastructure to the political divisions. How is it?
How useful is this going to be on the day itself?
Yes, before the day, the day itself, and even after. In the course that I teach, which is called the Politics of Environmental Disasters, we simulate the NDCC. And we do this throughout the semester, that the students have to role play the whole semester, not just for one moment. It's the whole semester that they do it. And the first lesson I teach them is to connect the science with the politics. This is really what's absent here, is the connection of the politics to the science, to the governance and the politics, or the lag in that connection, and then you need to close that gap. And that gap, unfortunately, will not be closed by the scientists. It will have to be closed by the politicians. It will have to be closed by the governance people, because the scientists can only give you, they can only give you a map. And what to do the map, the decisions you have to make is based on that. So this is a good example, because following what Mahar has done, last week I had a meeting with my whole staff. We've decided in the School of Government of Ateneo, we'll transform into a disaster private agency until December, so that we mainstream completely this, and so the next time around it happens, we know exactly what to do. And when you do that, the first thing you do, if you're a good disaster management agency, is to secure your people and your families first. That way you can, you can do the rescues, you can do all the hard decisions because you don't have to worry about other things. So using this map and using the Google map as well, we map out all our different people all over. So we now exactly know where many of them are. We're still going.